Adopt a Stray, the story of Kiki and Rorie. Scene 1. Kiki's world. The kitchen smelled like heaven. Kiki inhaled deeply as she leaned against the doorframe, watching her parents move around each other in their familiar dance. Mom was humming a melody Baba had taught her, something about cherry blossoms and spring rain, while she shaped rice with practiced hands. On the counter sat her special bamboo rice paddle next to a jar of umeboshi that had arrived in last month's package from Tokyo. "Kiki, taste this and tell me if it needs more fennel," Dad said, holding out a wooden spoon. His dark hair were wild as always, and flour dusted his t-shirt where he'd absent-mindedly wiped his hands. The spice rack held pride of place by the stove, a rainbow of jars labeled in his mother's careful handwriting. Kiki tasted the broth, letting the flavors wash over her tongue. "Maybe a tiny bit more salt?" she suggested. "Ah, you've got your Nana's palate," Dad said with a wink. Mom laughed, her hands still shaping and patting. "Remember when we visited Malta and your mother taught me to make pastisi? She kept saying I was being too gentle with the dough." "And when we went to Tokyo and your father tried to teach you how to roll sushi?" Dad countered with a grin. "That poor man!" "So patient with his clumsy fingers," Mom said, shaking her head. Their laughter filled the kitchen, wrapping around Kiki like a warm blanket. She loved these stories, pieces of family history that belonged only to them. But sometimes they made the empty spaces in the house feel even bigger. Mom and Dad had each other, and their memories, and their jokes that nobody else understood. Kiki had, well, just Kiki. Her eyes drifted to the family photo on the wall, taken 6 years ago when both sets of grandparents had visited for her first birthday. Everyone smiling at the family dinner table, a mix of faces and features that somehow all fit together. Sometimes at school, when kids asked about her family, they looked confused. "But you don't look Japanese," they'd say. Or, "How come you cannot speak Maltese?" Kiki traced a pattern on the doorframe with her finger, gathering her courage. "I was thinking about having a dog again." The kitchen went quiet except for the bubbling pot on the stove. "A dog?" Mom asked, her hands pausing mid-shape. "I just thought it might be nice to have someone else around, someone who's just mine," Kiki said, the words coming out in a rush. "I could take care of it and everything." Her parents exchanged a look, that special grown-up language of raised eyebrows and tiny head tilts. Mom wiped her hands on her apron and came over, brushing Kiki's brown hair from her forehead. "Animals are a big responsibility, Kiki-chan," she said gently, using the nickname that only came out when she was feeling especially tender. But Kiki noticed Mom didn't say no, and that tiny spark of hope was enough to make her heart sing. Scene 2. A conversation about responsibility. The living room was Kiki's favorite spot in the morning. Sunshine streamed through the green blinds, making the glass fish wind chimes sparkle with rainbow colors. The red, green, and white Maltese tile floor room magically matched the furniture that Dad had shipped home from all over the world. Kiki sat cross-legged on the sofa, back straight, waiting. Her parents had that look about them, the one that meant important things were about to be discussed. Dad set his coffee mug down on a coaster. "Your mother and I have been talking about what you said yesterday." Kiki's heart beat faster, but she tried to keep her face serious and grown up. "A pet isn't just fun and games," Mom said as she sat on the sofa. "It's like adding another person to the family, one who can't tell you when they're sick or hungry." Dad nodded. "There's the daily walks, rain or shine, vet visits that can be expensive, training classes." "And picking up poop," Mom added with a little nose wrinkle that made Dad laugh. "So much poop," he agreed solemnly, but his eyes were twinkling. Kiki nodded so hard her hair bounced. I know. I've read 3 whole books about dog care from the library, and I saved half my birthday money, and I could use my allowance for dog food, and I'd wake up early every single day for walks, even on weekends. Her parents exchanged another one of their silent conversations. Dad ran a hand through his hair, something he did when he was thinking hard. Well, he said slowly, we thought it might be time to visit that animal shelter we follow on social media, just to look. Kiki launched herself across the room, throwing one arm around each parent. Really? When? Today? Tomorrow? Can we go right now? Mom laughed, hugging her back. How about Saturday morning? That gives us time to read up on adoption procedures. And, Dad added, raising a finger, just to be clear, we're only looking. No promises yet. But the way Mom's eyes crinkled at the corners told Kiki that just looking might turn into something much more exciting. Scene 3. Off to the shelter. The animal welfare shelter sign had paw prints painted around the edges, as if a parade of happy animals had danced across it. Kiki hopped out of the car, her stomach fluttering with butterflies of excitement. She'd barely slept last night, her head filled with dreams of the perfect dog. Ready, Explorer? Dad asked, using his special nickname for her, the one he'd given her after she'd climbed to the top of Nana's tree when she was just 5. Kiki nodded, even though her heart was racing. What if she didn't find the right dog? What if none of the dogs liked her? Inside, the shelter smelled like clean floors and dog food. A loud chorus of barks, whines, and yips filled and enveloped the entire space. Other families moved from kennel to kennel, talking to shelter volunteers in blue vests. A boy about Kiki's age was giggling as a spotted dog licked his fingers through the fence. For a moment, Kiki felt a pang of jealousy at how easy it seemed for him, how quickly he'd found a friend. Kiki walked slowly down the line of kennels, peering into each one. A white bulldog wagged its tail hopefully. A fluffy gray dog with one floppy ear barked a cheerful hello. A pair of terriers tumbled over each other, playing a never-ending game of tag. They were all wonderful, but Kiki didn't feel that special spark she was looking for. Mom seemed to understand, giving her shoulder a gentle squeeze as they continued down the row. Finding someone special? A woman in a blue shelter vest approached with a clipboard and a kind smile. We're just looking today, Mom explained. Our first time considering adoption. The volunteer nodded knowingly. Sometimes the right match isn't love at first sight. We have a few dogs in our quiet section who don't do well with all the hustle and bustle. She hesitated, then added, There's one newcomer who's been particularly shy around visitors. Would you like to meet her? Kiki's ears perked up. Shy? Why is she shy? The volunteer's face softened. Some dogs need a little extra time to trust again. Not all of them have had easy lives before coming here. Something about those words made Kiki's chest feel warm. Can we see her, please? She asked, looking up at her parents. They nodded, and Kiki followed the volunteer toward a quieter corner of the shelter, her heart beating a little faster with each step. Scene 4. First glimpse of Rorie. The quiet section lived up to its name. The barking from the main room was muffled here, and the lighting was softer. The volunteer led them to the last kennel on the right and stopped. This is Rorie, she said softly. She came to us just last week. Kiki stepped forward and felt her breath catch. Inside the kennel lay a dog with short white and brown fur that gleamed like polished chestnuts in the gentle light. She was thin, too thin, with ribs that showed through her coat like the bars of a xylophone. Her ears were pulled back against her head, and her eyes, those eyes, round and deep brown, watching Kiki with a mixture of caution and something that looked almost like hope. She's part boxer, part American Staffordshire Terrier, the volunteer explained. About a year old, so still very much a puppy in many ways. She was found wandering near the highway. No collar, no microchip. Kiki knelt down slowly in front of the kennel, her knees touching the cool concrete floor. She didn't speak, didn't make any sudden movements. She just watched as Rorie lifted her head slightly, nostrils twitching as she caught Kiki's scent. "Hi, Rorie," Kiki finally whispered, her voice as soft as falling snow. "I'm Kiki." She carefully slipped her fingers through the wire mesh of the kennel door. Rorie blinked, then rose to her feet, a slow, deliberate movement. She approached with hesitant steps, her tail held low but not tucked. When Rorie's cool nose touched Kiki's fingertips, a shiver ran up Kiki's arm and straight into her heart. It wasn't scary. It was like finding something she hadn't known she was looking for. "She doesn't know if she belongs anywhere," Kiki whispered, not even realizing she was speaking aloud. "Just like sometimes, I don't know if I belong anywhere." Mom knelt beside her, gently placing a hand on Kiki's shoulder. "What do you mean, sweetie?" Kiki shrugged, her eyes still locked with Rorie's. "Sometimes I feel like I'm not enough of anything. Not Japanese enough for Japanese things. Not Maltese enough for Maltese things." She bit her lip. "Just in between everything." Dad crouched down on her other side. "That sounds lonely sometimes," he said quietly. Kiki nodded. "But look at her, Dad. She's in between too. Not all boxer, not all... What was it called?" "American Staffordshire Terrier," the volunteer supplied gently. "Yeah, she's a mix of things just like me." Kiki smiled as Rorie's tail gave the tiniest wag, so small you might miss it if you weren't looking carefully. But Kiki was looking, and she knew with absolute certainty that she had just met her very best friend. Scene 5. The Choice to Adopt. "Would you like to spend some time with Rorie in our meet and greet yard?" the volunteer asked, already reaching for the keys clipped to her belt. 5 minutes later, Kiki sat cross-legged on the floor in the shelter's fenced yard. The afternoon sun warmed her shoulders, making shadows dance as clouds drifted overhead. A few feet away, Rorie stood watchfully, her thin legs still trembling slightly. "It's okay," Kiki said softly, switching to the gentle voice she'd used when she'd found a baby bird fallen from its nest last spring. "No one will hurt you here." Rorie's ears twitched as if she were trying to catch every word. She took one step forward, then another, her nose working overtime to learn Kiki's scent. When Rorie was close enough, Kiki slowly, very slowly, extended her hand, palm up, fingers relaxed. The dog sniffed it carefully. Then, in a moment that made Kiki's heart nearly burst, moved closer until Kiki's palm rested against her side. Kiki could feel every rib beneath her fingertips. "You need someone to take care of you," she murmured. "Someone who understands what it's like to be different." She thought for a moment, then added, "I think maybe you could take care of me too in your own way." At those words, Rorie's tail began to wag, not the hesitant twitch from before, but a real wag that made her whole body wiggle slightly. "Mom, Dad," Kiki said, not looking away from Rorie, I think she's the one." Her parents exchanged a glance that Kiki couldn't quite read. Dad cleared his throat. "Honey, are you sure? There are lots of other dogs here, maybe ones who might be easier to train or who already know how to be family pets." "But none of them need me like she does," Kiki said simply. "And I don't think any of them would understand me like she does." Mom's eyes grew suspiciously shiny. "How do you know she understands you, Kiki-chan?" Kiki shrugged, unable to put the feeling into words. "I just know. Like how you knew Dad was your person, even though he came from far away and didn't speak Japanese." Dad laughed, a warm sound that made Rorie's ears perk up with interest. "She's got us there," he said to Mom. Then to Kiki, "If you're ready for the responsibility, and if the shelter approves us as adopters, then yes. Rorie can come home with us." Joy bubbled up inside Kiki like a fountain. She wanted to jump and shout, but she didn't want to scare Rorie. Instead, she just whispered, "Did you hear that, Rorie? You're coming home with us. We'll be your family now." And as if sealing a promise, Rorie gently licked Kiki's hand, once, twice, 3 times, before settling down beside her, their shadows merging into one on the sun-warmed grass. Scene 6. Road to a new home. The family car hummed along the road, carrying them all toward home. Kiki sat in the back seat with Rorie nestled beside her, wrapped snugly in a soft orange blanket that Mom had kept in the trunk, just in case. Outside, trees and houses zipped by in a colorful blur. "Is she doing okay back there?" Mom asked, twisting around to peek from the front passenger seat. "She's perfect," Kiki replied, gently stroking Rorie's head. The dog's eyes were wide, watching the world go by through the window. Every time a car passed in the opposite direction, her ears twitched like radar dishes. "Remember, she might be a bit overwhelmed at first," Dad said, catching Kiki's eye in the rearview mirror. "New places, new people, new smells. It's a lot to take in." Mom nodded. "We'll need to take her to Dr. Zoran tomorrow for a checkup. And we should start researching the best food to help her gain some healthy weight." "And training classes," Dad added. "Even the sweetest dogs need to learn good manners." Kiki was only half listening. She was too busy studying Rorie's face as the dog took in each new sight and sound. When they stopped at a traffic light, a bicycle whizzed past, and Rorie's head swiveled to follow it, her expression so curious that Kiki had to giggle. "You know what I've been thinking?" she said, smoothing the blanket around Rorie's thin shoulders. "Maybe being a mix of things isn't bad at all. Maybe it just means you get the best parts of everything." Dad caught her eye in the mirror again. "That's a very wise thought, Explorer." "Indeed," Mom agreed. "Your father and I have always said that you got the best of both our worlds. My creativity and his studiousness. My patience and his sense of adventure. Plus," Dad added with a grin, "my amazing hair and your mother's beautiful eyes." Kiki laughed, but her mind was already spinning with new ideas. "I'm going to make Rorie a special name tag," she declared, "with little decorations from both Boxer and Amstaff traditions." "Do dogs have cultural traditions?" Mom asked, sounding genuinely curious. "I don't know, but I'll research it," Kiki said. Then lower, she whispered to Rorie, "And if they don't, we'll make our own traditions. Just for us." As if understanding, Rorie turned her face away from the window and leaned against Kiki's side, releasing a small sigh that sounded almost like contentment. And just like that, the journey to their new life together had begun. Scene 7. Settling in. Golden evening light spilled through the windows of Kiki's home, painting warm rectangles on the living room floor. In one corner sat a brand new dog bed, plush and round, like a nest, alongside a shiny water bowl and a rope toy shaped like a bone. Rorie stepped through the front door with caution, her nails clicking softly against the tiled floor. She froze for a moment, taking in the unfamiliar surroundings, her nose working overtime to catalog 100 new scents. "It's okay, Rorie," Kiki encouraged, kneeling nearby, but giving the dog space to explore. "This is your home now." Slowly, Rorie began to investigate. She sniffed the edge of the couch, the big wooden chest that served as a coffee table, the bookshelf where Kiki's treasures lived, a tiny origami crane she'd made herself, a smooth stone from the beach in Malta, a small glass bird Dad had brought back from a business trip. When Rorie reached the dog bed, she circled it twice, then gently prodded it with one paw as if testing to see if it might suddenly jump up and chase her. Kiki tried not to laugh. "That's your very own bed," she explained. "Much comfier than the shelter kennel, I bet." From the kitchen came the sound of cabinet doors opening and closing, followed by the clatter of pots and pans. A minute later, Mom appeared with a small plate in her hands. "I made something special," she said, kneeling down next to Kiki. On the plate sat what looked like a homemade dog biscuit, golden brown and shaped like a bone. "What is it?" Kiki asked, peering at the treat. "A little bit of this and a little bit of that," Mom said with a smile. "Some ground oats, a little bit of the tuna we got from the fishmonger, and a sprinkle of the bonito flakes from Japan. A multicultural treat for a multicultural family," Dad added, coming to join them. Kiki held the treat flat on her palm, the way the shelter volunteer had shown her. "Look, Rorie," she said gently, "a special welcome treat just for you." Rory's nose twitched with interest. She approached carefully, sniffed the biscuit, and then delicately took it between her teeth. Instead of gobbling it down, she carried it to her new bed, settled into the plush cushion, and only then began to nibble, her eyes still watching the family. "Smart girl," Dad said with a nod of approval. "She's making sure her treasure is safe." "And she already knows that's her special spot," Mom added. "Dogs are very clever that way." Kiki beamed with pride as if Rorie had just won a medal at the Olympics. In that moment, with evening shadows stretching across the floor and the sound of Rorie's contented munching filling the room, everything felt exactly right, like the last puzzle piece sliding perfectly into place. Scene 8. A shared moment of belonging. Night wrapped around the house like a soft, dark blanket. Stars peeked through the kitchen window, curious to see the new addition to the family. Everyone else had gone to bed, but Kiki had asked for special permission to spend a few quiet minutes with Rorie in the courtyard before bedtime. The yard was peaceful at night. Wind chimes tinkled softly from the porch, and the stone lantern cast a warm glow across the space. Kiki sat on a cushion she'd brought outside, her back against the yard wall. Rorie lay beside her, no longer trembling, her thin body curled into a C shape with her nose almost touching her tail. "You know what's funny?" Kiki whispered, stroking Rorie's side. "At school, when kids ask where I'm from, I never know what to say. If I say here, they look at my eyes and say, 'No, where are you really from?' If I say Japan and Malta, they get confused because they don't know where Japan is, and they say I don't look Japanese enough." Rorie's eyes, reflecting the starlight, watched Kiki attentively. "I bet if you went to a dog park, other dogs might not know what to make of you either," Kiki continued. "Not quite boxer, not quite Amstaff. But you know what? That just makes you special. One of a kind, Rorie." Rorie's tail thumped against the ground once, twice, 3 times. "I have an idea," Kiki said, suddenly sitting up straighter. "Let's make a promise, you and me. Let's promise that we'll always be proud of all our parts, every single piece that makes us who we are. No more feeling like we don't fit in, because we fit together and that's what matters." She held out her pinky finger. "In Japan, they make pinky promises like this. And in Malta, Dad says they seal promises with a handshake, so let's do both." Rorie blinked, then lifted her paw and placed it gently in Kiki's outstretched hand. Kiki giggled. "That's perfect! A Japanese-Maltese boxer Amstaff promise, the best kind." And there, under a sky full of stars, with wind chimes singing their gentle lullaby, Kiki felt something she couldn't quite name, a feeling of rightness, of belonging, of home. Not because she suddenly fit perfectly into one world or another, but because she'd found a friend who understood what it meant to be uniquely herself. Epilogue. That night, Kiki dreamed of adventures, of her and Rorie running through fields, exploring forests, discovering treasures, and making friends along the way. In her dream, they were brave and strong. And wherever they went, they brought a little bit of magic with them. When Kiki woke the next morning, she found Rorie curled up on the rug beside her bed, not on the fancy new dog bed, but right next to where Kiki slept, as if keeping watch through the night. And Kiki knew, with the deep wisdom that sometimes comes to children when grown-ups aren't looking, that this was just the beginning of their story, a story of friendship, courage, and the wonderful journey of discovering that the very things that make us different are often the things that make us most special of all. Because sometimes the family you're born with and the family you choose come together to create something more beautiful than either one alone. And that was a story worth telling indeed. The end, for now.